Yeah.
If they're having kind of a higher level of respiratory support, they might even have the, ventilator tube down their throat connected to a ventilator, or a mask over their nose, a little tiny mask, but a mask over their
Yeah.
nose to help them breathe. They could have a feeding tube. Well, they will most likely have a
Mm-hmm.
feeding tube in their mouth or nose, probably have an IV. So with all of that, you have to also be prepared to take in a lot of information, because we'll be explaining all of those things to you. We want you to know exactly what all is attached to your baby and why, what its purpose is. You know, um, we'll explain if we're giving them any medications or IV fluids, how we're going to feed them. We probably won't feed them right at the very beginning. What kind of schedule they'll be on, because every baby, like I mentioned, they're all on a schedule. We'll explain all the rules of the NICU, such as like visiting and how it works if you need to call for information, how often you can be in the NICU, which fortunately for the parents is pretty much all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and just things like that. So lots of information. The other thing that parents should be prepared for, to realize, is they may not be able to hold that baby for a little while. It's the most natural thing in the world. Once your baby's born, you want to hold that baby. Of course you do.
Yeah.
Some of these little ones, they're not able to be held for a little while, and that probably was the case with Caroline,
It
right?
was. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that oh man, I want to say we almost had to wait for like at least a week, if not two. And
yeah,
because like you and a couple of the other nurses that we had, like, it was like, oh, we're getting pretty close. We just got to get it cleared by the doctor and all these things. And I'm like, okay. And,
yeah.
and I'll be honest with you, like, whenever it was time for us to be able to hold her, I was scared to hold her because I had only seen her in
Mhm.
that box for so long. And I
Yeah,
was like, oh man, like, she's so little. Like, I'm afraid I'm going to break her.
yeah, yeah,
And one of the things that you told me was just like, you're not going to break this kid. Like, she's resilient. And it's so
yep,
true. Like, even
yep.
though they come out very small, they are fighters
They
at
are. It's
birth.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I'll tell you, those little ones, you always think about, oh, babies just lay there and sleep. They don't move much. They move. They move around.
Oh,
There's a
yeah.
reason why we keep those sides up and keep those, doors locked and all
Yeah.
that stuff on those incubators, because, not just keep the heat in. Of course, there are many reasons. But yeah, I've seen babies scooted all the way over to the side of that box, and I'm like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
how did you
Oh,
get over
gosh.
there?
Yeah. Whenever we went in, and I kind of prepped Kylie for what, she was going to experience whenever she went in, because she
Yeah.
had so many other issues that was going on. But whenever we walked in for the very first time, I looked over in the corner and I could see Caroline's little feet and legs just kicking up kicking up a storm.
Mhm.
And y'all were like, yeah, she will not stop kicking. I don't know what it is. And
Yeah.
it's funny because now whenever she gets ready to go to sleep, she lays down and she starts kicking her feet up the exact same way.
Really?
Yeah, and
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, it's just funny to see like how some things just kind of just stick with kids. I guess I don't
Yes.
know. It's weird, but
Yes. Yep.
yeah. So, what are some interesting facts that that can help parents understand like the severity of these cases? Because a lot of times, like, I remember one nurse telling us that to put an IV in for a kid, it was like almost like putting an IV through like a needle of a hair or something like that. So.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because you're dealing with a human, of course, but it is so little. Like,
Yeah.
you've gotta definitely have some steady hands, I'm sure.
Right. And we do have some specialty equipment too. We have a little light that we can put, their little skin is thin and all that, but we can actually put a light under, let's just say, their wrist if we're starting an IV there, and it'll, kind of shine the light through there, so it does help us see the veins a little bit better. But yeah, I think when you mentioned that hair to me, I said, no, it's, not a hair, but maybe like spaghetti.
Yeah.
But I actually looked it up so that I could be a little more concise for
Oh,
your
yeah.
information. So we usually use a 24 gauge IV catheter. So I looked that up just to see what is the diameter of that. So the outer diameter of the catheter we usually use for their IVs is 0.7 millimeters.
Golly, off the top
Yeah.
of my head, I don't know how big that is, but it sounds very, very, very
Well,
small.
I mean, how many millimeters are in an,
Yeah,
even
exactly.
half an
So
inch?
it's
I don't know, but
yeah.
yes. So the inner diameter is like a half of a millimeter.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
to know that will give you an idea. Your vein's going to be just a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah,
But yeah.
that's so
And some of
crazy.
them are bigger than others, obviously.
Oh,
We
yeah.
we like the bigger ones, but yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, I mean, it's a skill for sure, and
No joke.
I'm not the greatest at it, but fortunately we are surrounded with a lot of great nurses that can do those things.
That's crazy. And the other thing too, like with all of you guys, like y'all were all so cool, calm, and collected, and like it's just people are built differently, and you ladies
Yeah.
were completely built differently, because I'm telling you, like it would, like that was stressing me out just watching y'all, because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how they're gonna do this, but it's like you guys do this all the time. It's not that big of a deal to
Right.
you,
Right.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean y'all've got a definite special skills worth, that's for sure.
Yeah. Some of the other things back to just understanding kind of the severity, um, it does get kind of difficult because a baby can look in appearance, if you take away the wires and everything, they can look pretty normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you think of a preemie as maybe looking like a little alien or, different where you can tell they still need to develop. And that's not always the case.
Yeah.
So parents want to walk in and treat them like they're a term newborn, and start talking to them and maybe just pick them right up if they're, depending on what situation. Like you said, Caroline was in the box for a while.
Yep.
But, we have them on a schedule for a reason. Every single thing that we do in the NICU is for a reason. Again, think back to they're in an ICU.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a reason for every single thing that we do. They might be swaddled, they might not be swaddled. They might be eating, they might not be eating. We might, be holding off on giving them a bath. You may not be able to hold them. So, we cluster our care, and those are the only times we want that baby disturbed. And like I said, parents can want to, because they look like they're well, they want to go in there and just start talking to them and disturb them. And while that is not necessarily, you could talk to and touch a sleeping older infant or term infant even, and it wouldn't bother them. But that's kind of overstimulating for these premature babies.
Well,
so we try to keep it a little bit quieter and not touching as much. It's kind of a fine line, because obviously it's also important for these babies to be held and touched and talked to by their parents.
Mm-hmm.
But we just kind of have to pick and choose the best times for those things to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and like with y'all's NICU at your hospital, like it's more of like an open floor. So it's like,
Yeah.
a lot of parents can want to go in there and like talk to their kids. Like you said, like it's just a regular newborn. And then
Right.
the kid right next to you may have just came in like 2 hours earlier, and they're going through a whole lot. So it's like super important to make sure that you're abiding by those rules that you guys have, because
Right.
it's not like they have their own personal, space. They have their personal space, but they don't have like their own personal
It's
room.
not private.
Yeah.
Right. It's not private. Yeah. And the other reason too for not disturbing, and I probably gave you this talk because I give it a lot, which is a baby burns calories with every single thing they do. You and I, just to be alive, you have to burn calories, right? Just sitting, you're burning calories just for your body functions. But, it's not just when they're eating or crying, those are activities. You think of that as activity, like we have exercise, and you're burning calories, but also just for them to maintain their body temperature, just, being awake and alert and looking around, which is why we don't, we like to limit when they're disturbed. That's why we keep them in a warmer, to help them, not have to work so hard to maintain their body temperature. And why we have their set care times, because we want all the activity to happen at once, and then we want them to rest.
For sure.
Let them sleep so they're not burning as many calories, because they're burning calories, they're not growing as quickly. And that's the name of the game, right? We want them to be able to gain weight. It's going to help with all those things, maintaining your temperature, and eventually getting you home. So, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But, they do, just like when we don't feel well, or when someone else is in the ICU, that rest, that just complete rest, their little bodies really need that to help them, recover from whatever it is they're going through. So, the other thing I say is, think of what this baby would be doing if it wasn't born yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Which it should not, in an ideal world, it would not have been. It wouldn't be doing anything.
Yeah.
It would be in a dark environment, sleeping when it wants to, moving around when it needs to, and it wouldn't have to digest its own food, eat a bottle, breastfeed, whatever that may be, all the bodily functions,
Well,
so,
and it's weird, because it's like, you used the term like an alien earlier, and that's exactly what I have always said that Caroline looks like. I've got a picture of her on my phone, and I've not brought her or brought myself to show her that picture just yet, because she loves little babies, and she's got a sister on the way, and it's like, I don't want to show her that just yet, but it's like whenever the time's right, like Kylie and I, we've talked about like how we're going to talk to her about how she was brought into this world. But you're truly seeing something that that if it were not for science in this world, we would not be able to see that.
No.
And I mean,
right.
you're seeing what God typically does not allow you to see, which is super interesting to be able to
Right.
see how far that our science has advanced to where, because like, let's just be real. I mean, if this would have happened 20 years ago or 50 years ago, Caroline would not have made it, and Kylie probably wouldn't have either. And it's,
Right.
I think that once again, whenever you take away the N in NICU and you think about it as the ICU, like it's some real, real intensive stuff.
Yes. Yeah, it sure can be. Some cases are not as severe, or let's just say not as intense as others. I mean, but yeah. So all of that, and I say, oh, you leave them alone, but we do have to balance that too with parents holding and touching and providing care for that baby, because that also is so important. It's just a real balancing act,
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the nurse's job is to advocate for that baby, what's best for that baby. And sometimes that means telling the parents, sorry, I don't think we should hold right now, even when we are at the holding stage.
Yeah.
Or, advocating for that baby to the doctor, like, hey, I think this is going on. We do a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and like the doctors that we had whenever we were in there, they were great, but it's like you guys are the ones that are spending, hours and hours and hours and shifts, with those kiddos. So it's like you guys know more than pretty much anybody else does. And, that was one of the things that, you all kind of became more like a family to us, especially during that time, that it was like, I guess it's weird because it's like as a new parent at that point with that situation that we were going through, it was like, we were blissfully ignorant, I guess, because we didn't really know what we were missing. Now, if we were to have to go through this situation again with our second, it would be way tougher because we know what we're missing at this point. But it's like knowing that I could trust you guys went so much further with like just us having peace of mind.
Right.
But we can probably dive into that a little bit later. But so I know that every situation is different. Of course, Caroline was a little bit more severe. There's definitely kids who are, way, way, way more severe than what she was. And then there's some that are not severe, maybe it's like a couple hours or maybe even a day or so. So what's the average length of a stay in the NICU?
Well, there really is no average stay. Some babies come and you think, oh, this kiddo's not going to be here very long. They're going to, they look great. And then something happens the next day, whether it even be just jaundice, where they have to be put under lights. I can't remember if Caroline ever ended up under the blue lights for jaundice at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, it can be something like that. It can be something like they're doing pretty well with their feedings, and then all of a sudden they're like, I'm done with that. I'm going to take a break for a while. You just don't ever know what's going to happen. So, all the babies, and I think all the nurses say this to parents, the babies dictate their needs and we follow their lead. They're telling us how long they're going to be, where obviously they're just assessing what's going on and giving them what they need. But like I said, they can start eating and it all looks great. And you think, oh, they're going to be going home pretty soon. And then they just get tired out. Because like I said, it's a lot of work for them. They're burning calories. And so sometimes they need to take a break, and sometimes that happens once. You give them a little break, and they take off, and then they're great. Sometimes they need a little bit of more of a step back, which I tell parents it seems counterintuitive. It seems like they're taking a step back, but trust me, when they take that little step back, it will move them forward quicker than if we push them too hard, because then they'll really put on the brakes, and it'll just take even longer.
Yeah.
So we really let them dictate, the things that they need and try to follow that lead.
That's awesome. Well, all right. Well, we're going to take a real quick break, and whenever we get back, we're going to talk about different types of emotions and other things that parents may experience past, like what to experience inside of the NICU and kind of like what may be going on personally with them. So we're going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, so we are back with Miss Gwen Farnsworth, NICU nurse here that was one of our NICU nurses with Caroline whenever she was born. So you have given us so much, just awesome information so far. One of the things that I kind of noticed as a parent whenever we were in the NICU was that emotions can kind of run high amongst parents, especially like what you said, like whenever you may have to go through and tell a parent, hey, look, like, I'm having to advocate for your child, like this may not be